My future mother-in-law secretly tried on my wedding dress and ripped my $1,000 gown. The day I picked out my wedding dress, my future mother-in-law made a strange comment. I wonder if that still fits me. I laughed it off and said, maybe, but you're not trying it on. She didn't take the hint. Why not just to see how it fits me, she said. I tried to explain why that was completely inappropriate, but she wouldn't let it go. She even started tearing up, saying she never got to have a wedding herself. I snapped back, and why didn't you? Oh yeah, you cheated on your fiancé. That was a low blow, and I regret saying it. But what she did afterward was far worse. She came over to talk things out, or so she said. But after she excused herself to use the bathroom, she didn't return for a long time. When I went to check on her, I heard noises coming from my bedroom. I opened the door and froze. There she was, squeezing into my wedding dress, grunting and struggling as the seams stretched. Then I heard the unmistakable rip of fabric tearing. The side zipper burst open along with the delicate sheer back. I felt sick. I had spent thousands on that dress. It was tailored to fit me perfectly. "What have you done?" I yelled. She looked at me and casually said, "Don't worry, we can fix it." I asked her why she'd try to put it on after everything I said. She repeated the same thing from before. She just wanted to see if it fit and to feel like a bride. This was less than 2 months before the wedding. She had ruined my dress and acted like it was no big deal. I explained that my original tailor had a months-long wait list. I was lucky to have gotten the appointment I did. Now there might not be enough time to fix it or to replace it. She didn't care. She didn't even say sorry. My fiancé, Brian, heard the yelling and ran in. He saw the shredded dress on the floor and was horrified. "What happened?" he asked. I told him everything. Without hesitation, he told his mom she'd have to pay for a new one immediately. But I wasn't ready to let go of that dress. It was the dress. The one I fell in love with. Before I could explain that, his mother started blaming the dress. "It wasn't my fault," she said. "It was a cheap dress. You should be thanking me." "What if it had fallen apart during the wedding?" I snapped. "There wouldn't have been a wardrobe malfunction because you're 4 sizes bigger than me." Brian backed me up. "It was tailored for her," he said. But she wasn't listening. I demanded that she pay for a new dress. She refused, said it wasn't her responsibility. I gave up on the conversation and stormed out. Brian stayed behind and tried reasoning with her. Looking back, I should have known this would happen. She'd always had boundary issues. Early in our relationship, she told me she'd always be the #1 woman in Brian's life. At first, I brushed it off, but it became clear over time that she meant it. She used to call or text in the middle of our dates. Gossip, small talk, anything to keep his attention. When I brought it up, Brian did talk to her and things improved for a while. But it never really stopped. Ruining my wedding dress was her worst offense yet. The next day, I went back to the bridal shop where I'd found the first dress. I hoped I could find another that didn't need tailoring. We were running out of time. The same woman who helped me before greeted me with a smile and asked why I was back. I was too embarrassed to tell her the truth, so I said my dog tore it up. She believed me and helped me search for a new one. After hours of trying on dresses, I finally found one I liked. I FaceTimed Brian to show him. His mom happened to be in the car with him. He looked at me and said I looked beautiful. But in the corner of the screen, I saw his mom sighing and rolling her eyes. I tried to ignore it. He asked about the price. I told him it was $1,500 and didn't need alterations. He was happy with that. That's when she chimed in loudly and without shame. "I hope it's more durable than the last one. That one was terrible." I felt my face turn red. She said that on speakerphone in front of the stylist. I quickly ended the call. I apologized to the stylist, who just laughed and said she'd heard worse. The days that followed were rough. Brian and I got into petty arguments. What hurt the most was that he started defending his mother more and more. He said he'd pay for the new dress and didn't want me to stress. I told him the issue wasn't just the money, it was the lack of boundaries. His mom was acting like she could run our lives. He said he felt stuck in the middle, that he loved us both and wished we could just get along. 2 weeks before the wedding, we were having dinner with his mom. She brought up the dress again and asked where I kept it. "I'm not telling you," I said. "So you can ruin that one too." Brian said I was being petty. She suddenly said I was trying to take away the last thing in her life that made her happy, that I should be grateful to have her around. Just then, the doorbell rang. My friend Emily had arrived. Brian invited her to join us for dinner because he said I seemed stressed. For one evening, I felt a bit of peace. I didn't mention the dress. The food was great. I finally relaxed. But the next day, I got a call from Brian's aunt. She told me to stop complaining about the dress. She said I was making too big a deal out of it. Others started calling too, some siding with me, others with Brian's mom. When I brought this up to Brian, he said, "Maybe she didn't mean to ruin it. It's just a dress, and you have another one now." Every time we were together, he tried to keep the peace. But the more he talked, the more it felt like he was siding with her. One afternoon, we talked about it again. He told me the dress drama was getting out of hand, that I was overreacting. I tried to explain it wasn't just about the dress. It was the principle, the pattern. She kept crossing lines, and no one stood up to her. The closer we got to the wedding, the more distant he became. His mom kept calling or stopping by. It felt like we were back at the start of our relationship, like she was trying to win him back from me. When we went to pick out my bouquet, I told Brian I didn't want his mom to come. He said she should be there. She had no one else to hang out with. I gave in. I found a bouquet. I loved champagne and pink, my favorite colors. Brian liked it too. Then she chimed in. "You should use red roses. They're more romantic." Brian agreed. She has a point. I ended up choosing red. But I hated them. On the way home, Brian said his mom might be good at helping plan the rest of the wedding. I stared at him. "If you want her to be that involved, maybe you should marry her." He was shocked, said he didn't mean it like that. But this was the pattern. I'd bring up my boundaries, and he'd paint me as the problem. I sat silently the rest of the ride, wondering what I was even doing anymore. The week before the wedding, everything came to a head. One evening, Brian's mom walked into the living room and asked where we were catering from. I told her it was a local restaurant I loved, one I grew up eating at, and had always dreamed of having cater my big day. She immediately dismissed it. "You should get food from somewhere fancier," she said. "This is a wedding, not a backyard barbecue." I told her calmly that it was my wedding, and this was the food I wanted. But she ignored me. Then she asked where the venue was. I showed her on my laptop. She stared at the screen and wrinkled her nose. "You picked that place. That neighborhood has a lot of crime. It's not safe. The whole thing feels ghetto." I bit my tongue, trying to keep it together. As I stood to leave the room, she spotted the guest list on the screen. "You need to cut this in half," she said. "We have more people on our side of the family who want to come." That was it. I told her straight up that if she had such a problem with the wedding, she didn't need to come. She rolled her eyes and called for Brian. He walked in, asking what was going on. I explained everything, how she was undermining the venue, criticizing the food, and trying to shrink my guest list to make space for hers. He sighed and said, "She's just trying to help in the only way she knows how." I could tell he was trying to be sincere, trying to keep the peace. But once again, his mom saw this as validation. "Yeah," she said. "So before you run your mouth, you should appreciate what I'm doing. Most parents don't care enough to be this involved. That's why their kids end up with nothing." That was the final straw for me. I walked upstairs and locked myself in the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed and cried. I felt completely alone. My emotions were brushed aside, and Brian didn't even check on me. That night, I cried myself to sleep. The day of the wedding arrived. And honestly, I wasn't excited anymore. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel like this was the day I dreamed of. I felt like I was just moving through someone else's plans. The dress I ended up wearing wasn't the one I loved. The bouquet was the wrong color. and I wasn't even sure if the man waiting at the altar really had my back. As I sat getting my makeup done, Brian's mom walked into the room. She was wearing an eggshell-colored dress, almost white. I asked her what she thought she was doing. She smiled and said, "It's tradition in our family for the mother of the groom to wear eggshell." "Don't make a fuss." I told her she couldn't wear that. It was my day. She said if I had an issue, I should take it up with Brian because he was the one who took her shopping for it. Fuming, I marched into the room where Brian was getting dressed and told him to ask his mom to change. If not, she wasn't welcome at the ceremony. He hesitated. His mom followed behind. Well, she asked him. He looked at me and said, "It's not really white. It's eggshell." "I think you're overreacting a bit." I was stunned. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked back to my room. The tears ruined my makeup. Everything I'd looked forward to was falling apart. I took a deep breath and decided to talk to Brian again. I needed to tell him how I felt, how I really felt. But as I walked toward the room, I heard voices. Brian and his mom were talking. I stopped outside the door. "She's such a crybaby," his mom said. "Is that really who you want to marry?" Brian replied, "I love her." His mom shot back. "When I was her age, I didn't cry over dresses and guest lists. She needs to grow up. Real women don't act like this. Real women don't throw fits over cheap weddings." Then came the line that broke me. Brian said, "Maybe you're right. The dress thing was a lot. But she got another one, so I don't know why she dragged it out. I just wanted everyone to be happy." I felt like the air was sucked out of my lungs. I opened the door and they both turned, startled, like they'd seen a ghost. I looked Brian in the eyes and said, "I won't be marrying you." His face crumbled. "What?" I told him I couldn't marry someone who couldn't put me first, who let his mother trample my boundaries, who stood by and did nothing while she disrespected me over and over. As I turned to leave, his mom muttered, "I knew it. Only a matter of time." Brian chased after me, begging me to stay. He promised he'd do better, that he'd set boundaries, that he'd make it right. For a moment I considered it. I really did. Until he said, "But you should try to make peace with my mom too. Maybe apologize for everything." That was the final nail in the coffin. I looked at him, then said quietly, "Lose my number?" I walked out and didn't look back. Months passed. Brian tried calling and texting from different numbers. He even sent flowers, but I ignored it all. Instead, I focused on healing, on growing, on becoming the woman I had put on hold during that entire relationship. And finally, life began to look up. I knew I deserved better. A partner who supported me, respected me, and stood beside me, not behind his mother. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.